Be quiet down here.
What?
We need it to be quiet.
You telling me to shut up?
I'm telling you not to be banging shit around or turning the TV on.
How do you need me?
Okay. I started drawing as soon as I could hold a pencil or crayons, more accurately. I really didn't care for the illustrations that were in my coloring book, so I would do my own on the backs of the pages, and it just kind of carried on from there. I just never stopped. It's like I never go anywhere without bringing a notebook and a sketchbook, because I'm sitting on airplanes or in cars or something. I'm trying to work out a scene or a pose or something, or writing out some dialogue scenarios. But I probably have like 100 of these sketchbooks that are just full of things from 15 years worth of stuff. I'm not like a typical comic book artist where it's like I get somebody hands me a script and then I translate that onto images on the paper. It's like pretty much everything I've done has been, I've been the writer and the creator of it, and it has to have some kind of personal, I don't know, personal attachment for me to be involved in it, because it takes so much out of me to do this. It's like every single line on that paper comes from me, and every single line on there is there for a purpose. None of it's none of it's just eye candy. Everything has a meaning on there, and because it's so draining and it takes so much out of me, um, something has to be worthwhile for me to invest that much emotion into it. So, all the projects that I've done, have been like a real personal statement for me, and they're things that I've done for myself. Nothing has been, for just purely entertainment value. Um, for a long time I thought it was kind of like a therapy, or like working out all my problems or angers or frustrations out on paper. And it was a lot cheaper than seeing a therapist or something. I was born in a trailer, and actually got taken to the hospital like sometime in the next week, and my birth mother was so drunk and out of it that she couldn't remember exactly when I was born. It was between Christmas and New Year's, she said. So they made my birthday January 1st. I'm the New Year's hope. Well, I spent my early formative years in an orphanage and foster care. I didn't get adopted till I was about 7, and so I spent a lot of time with a large group of kids, and with very few parental figures. And then when I did um, go out to be loaned out to some families on the weekends, it was never for very long, and a lot of times it just wasn't a very good situation. I mean, some of these people shouldn't have been allowed to have pets, let alone children. And I think there was a lot of monetary incentive for these people to do that type of thing, where they would get $100 to take a kid for the weekend. So when I was younger, I found it was best to just be quiet. Don't draw attention to yourself. Just kind of go over into the corner and entertain yourself for a while, and try not to bring anything bad down on yourself. And in fact, I'm sure some of these families that I went with thought I was retarded or something, because I never said a word, and I didn't interact with anybody. I just kind of stayed to myself. So as a result of that, I didn't have very good communication skills as I grew up, and as a result of that, I learned to express myself on paper, and which has worked to my benefit since then. I never had any formal art training at all. Everything was kind of self-taught, and I learned my anatomy not from comic books, which is like a major failing of the artist day. It's like they learn from an exaggerated picture, so they're like doing an exaggeration of an exaggeration, and so it's twice removed from life, and the muscle structure is like completely wrong, and the figures just have no weight, or they're not solid. And so I actually learned to draw from like Michelangelo's statues, just classic sculpture, paintings from that era. I just kind of worked at it and worked at it, and if I had trouble with one area, like hands and feet and faces are typical areas that most people have trouble with. I would just work on those continually until I thought I had them down to where I could put it in any position, and it would work, and it would look lifelike, and I could make it do what I needed it to do to tell a story. Believe it or not, I got like a failing grade in art class. I had one of those foolish instructors who, not sound arrogant or anything, but I was like so far ahead of everybody else that their typical assignments were just like things that I had done when I was a toddler, and so I just could not bring myself to do that. I was doing these big epic scenarios while everybody else was drawing a cone, and because I refused to kowtow to this instructor and do his basic first grade, three-dimensional stuff, I ended up getting a failing grade, which kept me from placing higher on the graduation list. But that wasn't anything I was concerned with at the time. My adoptive parents were blue collar, hardworking people from down south. They didn't see art as any type of career. It was just kind of a hobby to waste time with. I think they thought drawing was the equivalent of playing cards. It was just something to do, and I don't know. It kind of reached an apex in my teenage years where I was forbidden to draw in the house because I was wasting so much time, and was told to go out and get a real job, which I subsequently had to do. Washing dishes at a restaurant or working at the nursing home. And for a long time, I wasn't allowed to draw in the house. I would have to go to the library or do it at school, and just in secret. Up until I was like 16, I kind of felt like my life was this endurance test that I had to get through. It was like, well, what more could be thrown at me? I kind of felt like God had his elbow on my neck my whole life. It was like I just had to get to the end of it. I had to get to the end of the race, and then, then good things would happen. And when I was 16, I met this girl, and she was like an angel to me. She was just, absolutely everything I had ever wanted. And I thought, well, I did it. I got to the end of the race. I got, for not caving in, for not surrendering, for fighting through that 16 years of difficulty. I finally got to the end, and I've got I've got the prize. And she was like the exact opposite of me. I was dark and brooding and sarcastic and really venomous and everything, and she was like just like this bright white light who was always happy, and I never heard her say a foul word or a word against anyone. If I would like verbally attack someone, she would point out their good points, and so it was like I don't know, it was like positive and negative. We just kind of fit together perfect, and it was just like a perfect balance, and and everything that I had found, wanting in human nature, she would point out the positive aspects of it. So I don't know, I was really enamored of her, and I just, it was like meeting someone, and I just could not find any fault with her at all, and I don't know, she was just like a shining light in my life, and we were together for like every day for probably 3 years, and we were engaged, and we were supposed to be married after we graduated, and she was killed by a drunk driver, and I was like pretty much just destroyed. Everything that I had worked for, had been working up to, was wrapped around this person, and suddenly she was gone for no good reason. It's not like she had an illness or it was something that was anticipated. Just like one day out of the blue, somebody decided to get drunk and drive down a side street at 70 miles an hour, and suddenly she was just gone. You know, I don't know if I actually believed in a God, but if I did, then I really felt betrayed by him. That why make this beautiful, perfect flower and then just trample it afterwards? What was the point in that? What was the meaning of that? I almost felt like I was being punished. Like I had finally been shown this thing and allowed to hold it for just a moment, and then it was taken away, just as like a bitter joke. And I definitely lost my faith in human nature for a while there. So I spent probably 3 years after that doing really self-destructive things, just furious with life, just kind of charging through it. When I was little, when I was a kid, I used to play this game in the bathtub where I would try and keep all the water on one side of the bathtub, which is pretty much impossible. It just can't be done. But but it was a game I would play, and I kind of felt like that's what I was doing in my life. I was just trying to keep everything bad and evil and everything that would destroy me back. And you can only do that for so long before you tire and you realize it's futile. There's no way you're going to be able to do that forever, and it's never going to relent. It's never going to stop. So I finally realized that I was going to have to channel all this into something, or I was going to self-destruct. So I decided, well, I'll find this vehicle, which was the crow, to vent all this anger and frustration and rage. Um, so it became my therapy for a long time. I would work 8 or 10 hours a day at a dealership or on cars, and then come home and draw till 2 or 3 in the morning, and just get up and do it again. Um, really had no kind of life other than that. Um, just putting in time. But gradually, I don't know. I think music had a lot to do with it. I actually found some musical groups that I felt like were really speaking to me or spoke for me. That where somebody actually understood what I was feeling and validated it. Like Joy Division. Joy Division being a main influence on me, and their influence is really prevalent throughout the whole Crow book. Eric was typically just a vehicle for my emotions, but I was never really comfortable with drawing myself, so I worked up this character, this figure that was kind of Peter Murphy's face visually, and Iggy Pop's physicality, his kind of body and movements, real lean, kind of cat-like. Shelley's like just a literal translation of Beverly. Nothing much had changed. I kept that '70s hairstyle, and just kind of tried to capture her innocence and that kind of white light quality that I saw. And it was difficult to do. It wasn't fun. It was a lot of times it was like picking at scars, reopening old wounds, and as a result, I could only do so many pages at a time before I'd have to stop. And because of that, it took almost 9 years for me to finish it. I could only do it in like 20-page increments, and then I would have to stop. That's why the chapters are usually, only from 3 or 4 to 10 pages long in The Crow. Because that was particularly how I did the sequences. And the way I work is that I have to kind of do everything in one setting where I don't stop or I don't get up or quit until I've got to where I want to go. Otherwise, if I stop and come back the next day or a few days later, I'll start finding things wrong with it, and I'll talk myself out of it, and I'll find 100 reasons why I don't like it. And so I just don't allow myself to stop and start critiquing it. Otherwise, I would just find fault with everything and never finish anything. The creation part of it is what is important to me. It's like I have this image in my head that I want to get down on paper, and It's you know, if I can get 60% of that down on paper, then that's a tremendous success. You know, I don't think I've ever gone beyond that. If I get to that 100% mark, then it's probably time to quit. But I was just, you know, for paintings hanging in galleries or hanging over a sofa or something, that was just never important to me. It was never the finished work. It was just you know, getting what was in my head down on the paper, which was important to me. So I finally finished it, you know, like in the late 80s. I think I did the first page in like 1981. And I didn't finish it till like 1989. And it was basically something that I just did for myself. I had no intentions of publishing it anywhere. I never showed it to anyone. It was just this vehicle for me to you know, this cathartic type thing that was supposed to be helping me. Virtually everyone in the book is based on a real person. People I worked with or people I knew. Yeah, Fun Boy was kind of a cross between Iggy Pop and Jim Carroll. Jim Carroll being another 70s poet singer that I was influenced by. He was from New York and very much part of that 70s art scene there. But really nice, strong lyrics. In fact, he even had like a semi-hit song here in the U.S. with People Who Died. You know, and all the names were from graffiti. I had taken off buildings in Detroit. You know, different street corners that are in the book are actual places. In fact, I didn't make up any place. They're all real places, or were at the time, places in and around Detroit. A lot of them have been cleaned out or mowed down because of Detroit just had legalized gambling okayed in the last few years, and they really cleaned out a whole section of the ghetto for these big casino buildings. People have this image of Detroit as like a really dangerous, you know, anything could happen type city. It's funny, you know, I go some places and I'm down south and I tell them I'm from Detroit, and people like will literally take a step back, or you know, they definitely take you a lot more seriously. You know, people always ask me, why do you still live in Detroit? And it's, well, you know, this is where I grew up, this is where my friends are, I know where everything is, this is where I'm from, so I have no desire to move anywhere else. And you know, and Detroit has some history, and it has that kind of negative connotation to it when you say you're from Detroit, which is always fun to carry around. I mean, you know, you don't get that when you say I'm from Pittsburgh. You know, in comics work, I really like to do just pen and ink, and I really like black and white as opposed to colored work. In mine, especially. It's not like I think in black and white, or you know, I only watch black and white movies or anything like that. I just I think a lot of the power in comics is in the line work and the ink work, and the color just kind of detracts from that. I mean, when I'm doing paintings, that's a whole different technique for me. I mean, you know, oil paintings and watercolors are definitely a whole breed apart from comics. And I tried to do like these dream sequences and the flashbacks all in wash or watercolor to just to give it a softer, dreamy feel. My cheap Kmart watercolors. Since I was poor growing up, I had to use the most inexpensive materials I could find, and since I learned how to make those work for me, I've never really changed. You know, I do on occasion buy, you know, some of the more expensive tube paints where Kmart's can't really match their color intensity, but for the most part, I've learned how to make the cheap stuff work for me, and don't feel any need to change. In fact, I've had the same drawing board since I was 15 years old. As you can tell by looking at it, it's got a nice crust of ink and paint all over it. I actually bought it when I was like 16 from the first jobs I ever had. I was working in a senior citizens, old folks home. You know, I never had so many mothers in my whole life. You know, son, take me out in the sun, take me out in the garden. You know, everyone was in wheelchairs, and so I used to push them around and stuff. And share cigarettes with them. And I used to share cigarettes with them until one time after I'd been sharing cigarettes with this like 75-year-old man for a week. One of the doctors came up to me and said, "Don't give this man cigarettes, he has syphilis." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I've been sharing butts with him for a week now. I'm glad you told me." I had been working on cars for like 12 years, and I was just totally tired of it. It's like, you know, once I'd learned how to do something, I just got bored with it, and I wanted to move on to something else, to learn something else. And I had, you know, after like 6 years or so of working on cars, you know, doing body work and framework and stuff, I just, you know, I didn't feel like there was any more I could learn, and I was like, I don't know, 30 years old, 31, and I just wanted to do something else that was challenging, where I felt I could learn something and I could throw myself into it. And I don't know, just like on a whim, I tested out for medical school at Wayne State, and I placed really high in it. So I just, on Friday I was banging on a car, and on Monday morning I was sitting in a classroom. And Wayne State is tremendously expensive, so after 2 years I had to go back to work, and so I went back to work at a body shop. You know, my intent being to work for another year or so, and then go back and take some more classes. But in the meantime, the comic book stuff really started to take off for me. I was doing T-shirts for a comic book store to help pay for my books and things, and the owner of the store liked my work, and he actually asked if I had any comic strips at home. And so I don't know, just on a whim, I kind of took that in and showed it to him. And he really liked it, and he asked if he could publish it. And that was kind of how Caliber Comics was born. He owned like 2 or 3 stores in the Detroit area. And there were all these other comic book artists, or would-be comic book artists, living in the area who would come in on Fridays and get the new comics. And he saw all this talent coming into a store that wasn't really doing anything. And so he decided to start a publishing company. And The Crow was one of their very first books, and it sold amazingly well. And I actually got to the point where I thought I could make a living at it. You know, I looked at my income from the body work and from the comics work, and they were just about neck and neck. And I figured, well, there's no reason for me to get up and fucking skin my knuckles every morning on somebody's car that ain't mine. You know, when I could go down there and do what I actually like to do. After like 3 issues, I started getting offers from like film companies and studios and things that were interested in it. Which I was really surprised that it didn't take very long for them to latch onto it, but I mean, I always saw it as a film, you know. In fact, when I was like laying out the pages, I did it in storyboard form. My dad was a bus driver in Detroit, and I would go to work with him, and he would drop me off at the theater, and I would sit there and watch, you know, the same 2 horror films all day, and then he would pick me up on his way home. So, spent lots of weekends down there. I'm definitely influenced a lot by film. You know, when I'm drawing comics, I'm thinking of camera angles, and you know, I'm thinking of where do, you know, even though I'm drawing a scene, I'm actually thinking where I'm placing a camera. But you know, in reality, the camera is just my head. You know, where I'm looking at a scene from. Typically, you know, comics in that respect work just like film. You know, if you have the camera far away from the figures or the action, it tends to isolate it and make it more formal and less intimate. And comics work the same way. If you push in on somebody into a close-up, it adds more immediacy to it, and it makes it more informal. So in that respect, you know, comics and film are really similar. You know, and on the other hand, comics are a lot different than film. Whereas, you know, time is one thing where you can't really guide the reader on how much time to spend on each picture when he's reading a story. So typically you have to, like, to slow a page down, you have to put more panels in it, more pictures, so they have to spend more time reading it. Um, you know, put more dialogue or more caption balloons on a page to keep them on that page longer. Or if you want to speed it up, you use a lot of big panels, like on the action sequences. You know, I typically do three or four big panels, or splash panels, which is, you know, a whole panel. And in some instances, I even will do a double page panel, which is stretched over 2 pages. Um, and the other big difference between comics and film is sound. I mean, in comics you have these big sound effects, you know, plastered across the panels, and you just have to hope that the reader is going to accept those, and you know, and kind of like sound them out in his head. You know, actually, what you're asking the reader to do is act it out in his head. You're giving him like the visual cues, and you're asking him to act it out in his head, supplying the actors' voices and the sound effects and things, and you're just kind of giving him these visual cues to work from. You know, whereas in film, everything is just kind of presented to you and put right in your lap. You know, complete with background scores and um, digital sound and everything else. I had no aspirations about becoming involved in film or anything like that. I thought, for the most they'll have the option for 2 or 3 years and it'll lapse and then I'll get it back. So I never even thought it would get made to begin with, let alone that fast. I mean, within like 2 years, it was in production, which is just phenomenal and amazing. And at one point, one of the producers, in a meeting, one of the producers said, and this is no joke, he literally said this, I know we can do this as a musical, we can get Michael Jackson to star in it, and we can get Julian Temple to direct it. And I thought it was a joke. I started laughing, but he was completely serious, and that's how it is in Hollywood. It's like there's this beautiful tree, and every dog that comes along has to piss on it. And it got to the point where it was like, what the hell? Why do you even buy this thing when you want to completely change it into something unrecognizable? Why didn't you just come up with your own story? Why do you even bother with this if you're just going to try and change everything? And it got really, really far away from what it was supposed to be at one point. And then when Alex Proyas and Brandon came on board, they were both huge fans of the comic and insisted that it be taken back to what it was in the beginning. And Brandon especially was really enamored with the books, a big fan of the books, and was really instrumental in getting it as close to the comic as it is. And as far as I'm concerned, Brandon and Proyas are what made the first film. They're the two real stars of it. I think back in the 30s, somebody asked Raymond Chandler, how do you feel about what Hollywood has done to your books? And he said, fucking Hollywood hasn't done anything to my books. They're right on the shelf where they've always been. And that's kind of how I think about my stuff too. It's separate from them. It's never gonna be what they want it to be. It's never just gonna be something pure and entertaining. It's always gonna have to have a personal statement from me in it. Otherwise, I can't bring myself to do it. As much as I try to turn myself into a comic book whore, I just can't seem to do it. I can't seem to squeeze out a Spider-Man story or X-Men story. I just can't find it in myself to invest that much time and energy and emotion into it. So I just have to keep doing what I can do, what I'm good at, and and hope I don't get stale or start repeating myself. My father, after he died and I was sorting through all his papers and things, I found some of his old check stubs where he had made like, $2.30 an hour for years and years. And I was just amazed that he could support a family on wages like that. And I had a new respect for him after seeing that stuff because, you know, growing up, I knew we didn't have a lot, but I never felt wanting for anything. And now then I understood why he used to work, you know, 80, 90 hours a week. And because of that, you know, I never had a father that I played catch with or went to baseball games with or things like that. He was just some guy that would show up, you know, at dinner time and then go to sleep, and he would be gone before I woke up. So I mean, most of the time I spent with him was when I went with him on his bus routes. So, but he was, you know, he was a good person, and he never complained about anything. And in that respect, I try to be more like him. So my wife's having a baby here pretty soon, a girl, and yeah, I'm still, you know, even though I'm 40 years old, I still feel like I'm a teenager. I'm happier now than I have been since I was 18. You know, I'm really glad I didn't decide to just give up and accept things as they were. I mean, there was a great temptation to just give in to everything for a while there, and I'm really glad I didn't now because by not just accepting the way things were and to keep fighting, to keep pushing back all that negativity, it did finally pay off for me. Where you know, I feel like I have everything that I've wanted my whole life, and I can enjoy my life now. I don't feel like I'm going through some endurance test or I'm waiting to get to the end for the good part. You know, it's like this is it now. Yeah, unfortunately, the world is full of those people that, you know, who are in that same position I was, where they don't feel like they have a whole lot of hope or that things are never going to change. And I'm glad that they can get out of my work, that they're, you know, that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, that there is some hope, and that, you know, this true love thing does actually exist. You know, that it is obtainable. It's not just an ideal. And and I really feel sorry for people that have never experienced it, or they just, you know, they don't understand it, or they think that's like some ideal that they're never going to reach, because it is there and it is possible. And you know, and I actually feel lucky that you know, I've got it again or approached it again. You know, you know, when I met Karen, you know, I kind of fell in love like I did for that very first time, and it's you know, I feel really lucky for it. So.